On today's episode of the Engaging Marketeer, I wanted to talk about podcasts, because this is obviously a podcast, and how you actually get a podcast to number one in Apple's charts. Now, the reason I mention this is because when this podcast launched in April 2022, it went to number one in Apple's marketing chart on the weekend of release. So we launched the Engaging Marketeer on the Friday. I think it was 11 o'clock in the morning or noon, something like that. And it started to creep up the charts almost immediately within an hour or two. And by the end of the day, it was in the top 25 for business in Great Britain. That's the category that Stephen Bartlett's Diary of a CEO has been the number one pretty much forever. And in the subcategory of business, in the marketing category in Great Britain, it had gone to number one by the end of the day. And it was number one in Great Britain in marketing on the Friday, and I think it was number one on the Saturday and the Sunday as well, and didn't start to drop off to number 3 or 4 until the Monday. Now, the reason I mention this is because I got into a bit of an argument on LinkedIn recently, as I tend to actually do on a regular basis, because somebody who works in podcasting, who helps promote other people's podcasts and get them to number one in the charts and help them promote them, help them release them, put a post up about how they'd helped their client get to number one in their category, which I think was the pets and health, pets and animal care or animals and pet care, something like that. I don't know what the specific subcategory was, but it's quite a niche category. And they put this post on saying how they got it to number one in that category when it was released. And then somebody replied to that, who is a self-proclaimed podcasting guru with 20 years of podcasting experience, even though podcasting hasn't actually existed for that long, but we won't go into the fine details of this. Somebody replied to that saying, how much did you spend on ads to get it that high? To which the guy replied, well, nothing. That was all natural, organic, social. And this guy came back and said, that's nonsense. You can't do that. That's not possible. It cannot happen that you can get it like that. And then I thought, well, I'm going to wade in here because I've done it. You know, I have literally done it with the Engaging Marketeer podcast. Number one on weekend of release, within a few hours, in fact. No paid ads. No paid ads at all. And I came in and said, well, I've literally done it. It is possible. It's actually not that difficult. And then the guy laid into me. He said that he would leave me to my, my delusion about getting number one. That I was either lying, that I didn't do it, or I paid somebody else to do it and didn't do my due diligence on how they were going to do it, and they'd use paid media to do it. And the guy refused to accept that it was in fact possible because he hadn't done it. And no matter how many times I tried to explain that I've literally done it myself, he would not accept it. And it's one of those things where you project your own inabilities onto other people. And this happens all the time. If you're trying to learn how to start a business or learn how to do podcasting or learn how to do digital marketing and you buy a course or you go on some sort of 3-day retreat or whatever it may be, you'll always get people who will say to you, nah mate, that's a load of bollocks, that's not going to work, wasting your time there, absolute load of crap, anybody that puts money into those kind of things, they're just being ripped off, that's a load of shit, that's never going to work. And they say that because they can't do it. And they want to make excuses for their own inabilities in not being able to do it by telling you that you can't do it. Which is why they say, it's bollocks, it's not going to work. But that's what this guy was doing, and I knew for a fact it was going to work, and because I have literally done it. Now, I'm going to tell you now how I did it. How you can get your own podcast to number one in a specific chart in Apple. Now, the category that we got it number one in was the marketing category. And the way the charts work on Apple isn't like the way music charts work, or the way number one rankings in tennis work or in snooker works. But they all work off the same sort of principle. The more you get in a period of time, the better it does. So, for example, in snooker, this is relevant because we did an infographic on this many years ago for a client that was in a snooker table and retail client. In snooker, they used to update the rankings every year, just after the World Championships in May, I think it is, which meant from when the world rankings began up until we did this infographic, which I think was like 2012, 2014, something like that, there'd only been about 7 number ones in snooker, which is ridiculous to think of, that only 7 people had been number one in the world in snooker, because it was updated every year. So Stephen Hendry had it for, I don't know, like 10, 12 years. Steve Davis had it for about a decade before him. And then it goes back all the way to Ray Reardon, and then right up to, I think it was Neil Robertson was the most recent on our infographic, because it's only updated once a year. Now, in the music charts, that's updated every week. So whoever has the most sales throughout the week by the point the charts are made, which is on the Sunday, they're number one for the following week, for the whole week. Apple Music is very, very different with podcasts. Now, the chart on podcasts fluctuates completely throughout the day. So you can have a number 10 ranking at 12 noon, and then by 3 o'clock you could be number 1. Because it moves on a cycle. Now, I'm not going to give the specific hours for how this works, but we're talking roughly about a 4-hour window here. Roughly a 4-hour window. So all you need to do is to get all of your activity, and I'm going to tell you exactly what activity you need in a moment, in a specific time frame. Now, in order to get your move the needle, as they say it, on the charts, you need to get a large number of people to download your podcast. But it has to be new subscribers. New subscribers are what moves the needle. So, for example, if you've got 10 subscribers and they all download one podcast, that's not really going to do anything for you. If you've got 10 new subscribers and they all download one podcast episode, that's 10 downloads. 10 downloads. If, however, you've got 10 podcasts and you get 10 new subscribers and they all download all 10 podcasts, that's 10 times 10 is 100 downloads. You see how this can mount up? Now, I'm going to give you the exact numbers. Because I've got it in front of me on the screen here. Let me just roll over this. On the April the 22nd. April 22nd is when the podcast downloaded. And we got number 1 in the marketing category on Apple on April 22nd with 522 episode downloads. 522. And we launched the podcast with 10 episodes. That is literally 53 people to download 522 episodes. 53 people was all that was needed. Now, if you happen to have friends and family, that's at least 15, 20 people right there. If you happen to have clients or contacts on LinkedIn or on Facebook, that's a load more. If you've got a news list you can send out to, that's a load more. Getting 522 downloads, you just need 53 people to download all 10 episodes each, and one of them didn't download them all, then that's very simple. But the important thing is it has to be in a specific time frame. Now, say for example you've got 100 downloads, or let's give those figures actually. Say you've got 520 downloads over the course of a week. Then that's split between 7 days. That's split between 24 hours a day. That's not really going to do anything for you. You need all of those downloads in a specific 2-hour, 3-hour window, which is why we correlated everything to happen at noon when the podcast launched. So as soon as the podcast went live, everything was mailed out to all of the subscribers on the news list. Everything went out to social media. We had a competition running that went live at that exact point. Everybody needed to do it on that day in order to be able to enter. Hence, we had 522 downloads in the space of a few hours. That got the number 1 ranking in the marketing category. It's not that difficult. It's not that difficult at all. Now, this example that was on LinkedIn, this person that posted this about their client and how they got them the number 1 ranking in the pet care category, their client who ran that podcast was Lorraine Kelly. Lorraine Kelly. She's got thousands and thousands of subscribers on Twitter. She could have got that number 1 ranking with 1 tweet. That's all it would have taken to get the number one ranking. Yet still this podcast guru comes on and tells me, it's not going to work, that's crap, you can't do that, I'm going to leave you to your own delusion. There's no way you can get that number one ranking. I've been in podcasting for 20 years, I know how podcasts work. I know how everything works, I know how Apple's algorithm works. That's rubbish, you must have paid for traffic, you're lying, I know you don't. What an absolute prick. What an absolute bloody prick. Because he's arguing something he couldn't possibly know. He's telling me that, no, there's no way you could have done that. And I know for a fact I've done it. Because I did it. I didn't use somebody else for it. I didn't outsource it. I did it. I've got the screenshots to prove it. In fact, you can go back and check the charts to see that it was. It's not that difficult. So the point of this slight little rant is, firstly, don't listen to gurus on LinkedIn who think they know everything when in fact they are absolute dickheads who know nothing. Hi, Neil, you dickhead. And also, if you want to get a number one ranking for a podcast in a specific category on Apple, it's actually not that difficult. You just need to make sure that you time all of your activity so that your subscribers hit at the same point and they download all of the episodes. So if you get 50 subscribers downloading 10 episodes each within a 2 or 3 hour window, you are going to get a number one ranking in most of the subcategories within Apple. We got into the top 25 in the business category. Top 25 in business. That's one of the biggest categories on Apple. And we did that with just 53 people downloading 10 episodes each. It's not that difficult. It's not that difficult at all. Now, if you want any help with your podcasting, I'm going to pop a link below this podcast for a good friend of mine who helped me launch that podcast and came up with this strategy themselves. His name's Kane. He's awesome. And he runs regular webinars on how you can actually do this for yourself and how you can grow your podcast if you have one already, or how you can set one up if you don't have one already. So follow the link below this podcast. Have a look at what Kane says. Sign up to his webinar. It's free to go on to, and he'll show you how you can do this as well. And I will catch you on the next podcast.